So if you're not too familiar with intermittent fasting, essentially it's an eating pattern that cycles between periods of fasting, in other words, not eating, and of course periods of eating. Common applications of intermittent fasting include the 16 8-hour fasting window, essentially, and the clue's very much in the name, 16 hours of fasting followed by an 8-hour eating window. And once weekly 24-hour fasts, they seem to be becoming increasingly popular. Those are common examples. I mean, the list of purported benefits of intermittent fasting shown by early studies, and I stress early studies because, frankly, the research is somewhat minimal at this stage. There are some serious benefits to it, and I'm thinking outside of merely the sphere of weight loss here, which is obviously largely what I'm talking about on this channel. From a weight loss perspective specifically, though, a first point of note on this is it doesn't necessarily seem as though there's anything magical happening during this fasting window itself. Okay, hormonally, there's some different things going on in the body and whatnot. But it more so seems to be the benefits from a weight loss perspective of intermittent fasting are more aligned with the fact that you're likely to put yourself in more of a deficit because you've got this restricted window of eating, and therefore how's that going to affect your overall caloric intake? Well, it's not a guarantee, but generally speaking, people do tend to open themselves up to the possibility of eating a little bit less when having a short fasting window, as opposed to waking up and immediately eating breakfast. I'm thinking of the 16 8-hour fasting window in particular with that regard. So yeah, the jury's out. We'll know more on this in future studies, there's no doubt. But certainly from a weight loss perspective, the first point I'd note here is it doesn't seem as though there's anything magical happening during the fasting window itself, but rather how it affects your eating after that. I think another great benefit from a weight loss perspective is that it can improve and train your discipline muscle. It gives you these clear rules and boundaries about when you can, I suppose, say A, yes to food, and B, also say no to food. So through the application of that, even if you're not necessarily getting anything out of it from a weight loss perspective, or you think directly from a weight loss perspective, there is this indirect discipline muscle, or benefit rather to your discipline muscle, that you can train it greatly by having these windows. Some of my clients, we will introduce small amounts of intermittent fasting, not necessarily to hack through their plateaus or any struggles they're having on the scales, but more so, I've used it with a couple of clients that have had emotional eating issues, and it just gets them really strong with saying no to food at certain times of the day or during certain activities. As I say, it's a great discipline trainer. Even with some of those benefits considered, and I do overall, I must stress, I do think it's an important tool, as I say on this channel many times in discussions on intermittent fasting. A bit of a cliche from me at this stage. It's not necessary, but it is a great tool, would be my overall assessment of it. Now, that's a broad stroke to say the least, because there's a case-by-case analysis to be made there. Maybe it's more applicable for certain individuals than others, and we'll come on to that shortly as well. Generally speaking, though, I do think it has potential to be a really great tool. But there are considerations one must make. There are ways in which it can backfire. Number one on this, and excuse me, I'm not being rude, I've just got my notes here because I want to make sure I get this accurate and deliver as much value as I can. If you feel that I'm doing that so far, smash that like button down below. Number one, if you're still eating a bunch of rubbish, are you necessarily going to see the benefits of intermittent fasting from a weight loss perspective? Well, likely not, likely not. I mean, it still depends on how much of that rubbish you're eating during your window. But again, you're going to outweigh that good work, that perceivably good work, with sticking to a regimented fasting window by then going and eating a bunch of absolute rubbish. So it's no excuse to then go and eat poorly. I do see a lot of intermittent fasters who are perhaps self-justifying their poor nutrition habits by saying, listen, I'm doing intermittent fasting, it'll all work out, at least I'm minimizing my calories. Okay, maybe that works sometimes from a weight loss perspective. Is that the most sustainable strategy? More importantly, is it the most healthy strategy? Well, no, if you're still eating a bunch of rubbish, absolutely not. Might work for weight loss. We also care about health and longevity as well. Well, I certainly do anyway. And number two, it's not going to work if you're still eating, quote unquote, as much food in terms of the overall calories anyway as before. That's where it is going to backfire on you. Three, and obviously this is certainly relevant to my audience, if you are plant-based, if you are vegan, if you are vegetarian, or at least taking huge strides to move in that direction, well done, by the way, for doing so. But it can well be, as it is with those sorts of approaches, it can well be difficult at the best of times to get in, quote-unquote, enough calories. Now, this isn't a problem for everyone. I don't want to make this seem like this is a huge chore for all vegans and plant-based dieters to make sure they're getting enough calories. Fact of the matter is, though, a lot of these foods under the plant-based umbrella do have a very low calorie density compared to many of the foods on the standard Western diet, or even for that matter a Paleolithic or ketogenic style diet, some of those other diets. So it's absolutely worth considering that, yeah, sure, you might be getting lots of volume in your diet, you might feel full, but when you tot up the overall calories, are you actually getting enough to thrive and survive? Maybe not, and I suppose that really also depends on what your goals are, but in some cases this does happen. People are under-eating on the calorie front. They don't think they are because they're eating all this fibre, all this bulky, hearty, typically low calorie density plant food. There are some plant foods, just for the record, that are high in calorie density. That's a different story for a different video. But generally speaking, they do tend to be quite low. So if you're then, imagine going from that and also incorporating intermittent fasting into your routine, wow, you could seriously be at risk of quite radically under-eating on the calorie front. So again, not a problem for everyone, and this doesn't automatically mean that vegans and plant-based dieters shouldn't toy with, I use that word quite lightly, but shouldn't toy with intermittent fasting once or twice a week and see how they feel and see how that affects their results. That it isn't that binary, okay, you're vegan, you're plant-based, no intermittent fasting. That's not what I'm suggesting by any means, but it's a serious consideration if you're struggling on the calorie front. Another way in which it could backfire, all that period of time you're fasting, you're not digesting antioxidants, phytochemicals, other minerals, vitamins, fibre, all of these things that have inextricably been shown to be absolutely essential for our health and well-being. And not having those for a prolonged period of time, it's not too beneficial, and we already have a reasonable fasting window anyway. Obviously there's some assumptions here that you're sleeping well, but obviously at night we're hopefully having 9 or 10 hours where, and hopefully a little more, because I hope you're not eating just before bed. That wouldn't be such a smart move, I would say, and so not to do it regularly anyway. And so yes, there is automatically an assumption from myself here that you're already getting at least maybe, let's say minimum 10 hours, let's say 9 hours fasting. That doesn't mean 9 hours sleep, but obviously slightly you're not eating right before bed, and when you get up in the morning maybe you potter around a bit before you actually get your breakfast. And so yeah, let's say you're already fasting 9 hours of the day anyway. I suppose to up that to something like 12 hours, then maybe in the future 15, maybe 16 hours. It is manageable, but is it that necessary? Because you're already having this prolonged period of fasting where you're not having these foods. And calories do come into this question as well. If you're not getting enough calories in, you're having these prolonged mornings where you're not eating, let's say on a 16-8 method, since that is the most commonplace application of intermittent fasting, then yeah, maybe you will feel fatigue, maybe you will feel lightheadedness. Maybe also, just to play devil's advocate here, you'll feel a little bit funny, but it's really just because you've got this story where you've been eating every morning for the past 10 years of your life and not doing it, you feel really odd doing it. It's not necessarily fatigue and lightheadedness, it's just unusual, it's just a break in your habit, so it's a bit foreign to you, it feels a bit foreign to you rather. So yeah, just to play devil's advocate there, but certainly if you're getting fatigue, lightheadedness, we do need we do need those calories in there. If you're getting the hunger pangs, this is a sign that your body is deficient in nutrients, so get it in there, and calories as well. So get them in there, I would say, as a general rule of thumb in that case. So there's also some question about how intermittent fasting can impact the adrenals in a negative way as well. But again, we need more research, frankly, on this in time. And there's also a few groups of people who I would suggest that intermittent fasting is, in some cases, absolutely not suitable for whatsoever and should be avoided at all costs. Or all those where, again, further consideration is required. So the likes of children, breastfeeders, those who are pregnant, those who are on certain medications. Again, depends what the medication is, of course. Those with diabetes and whatnot. To varying degrees, fasting is something that perhaps should be held at arm's length and shouldn't be experimented with so much. Again, to varying degrees, because I've mentioned so many different groups there. So, all in all, I think there are an awful lot of considerations to make as to whether you actually apply intermittent fasting, and that's one of the litany of reasons, I suppose, as to why I don't necessarily recommend it all that frequently on this channel. I do also have questions about its effectiveness, and I hinted at that in some of my aforementioned reasons there. But yeah, overall, anyway, I do agree it's a powerful tool, but it isn't for everyone, as cliche as that sounds, and even if it is applicable to somebody, it's really often I find only applicable to that somebody in a certain situation. Perhaps they've tried all of my other plateau hacking weight loss strategies, nothing else has worked. Okay, let's give this intermittent fasting thing a shot. And I'm saying that as if it's laissez-faire and okay, let's try this next. There's a little bit more thought and analysis that's going into it from a coaching perspective, but to make it simplistic here, that's somewhat what's happening there. But again, it's a tool to have in the arsenal, I would say, in summary, but lots of considerations there. So if you want more information on whether this is suitable for you, I've got a 20-minute audio training on intermittent fasting and weight loss in the Natural Weight Loss Mastery Academy, which is my group coaching and training platform, plus, as well as that, 7 hours more of exclusive content that I'm actually adding to every single week. And of course, access to the private members group on Facebook, where you're going to get ongoing support to help you move towards your weight loss goals. So again, if you want more info on intermittent fasting and of course more widely weight loss, check out the Natural Weight Loss Mastery Academy. Super affordable, less than the price of a gym membership every month. Great place to go. So I'll link that in the description box down below. Alternatively, you can find more information about it at naturalweightlossmastery.com. So great tool, or rather can be a great tool for some people in certain situations. And I know I've not gone so much down the rabbit hole of when those situations are, but I just wanted to give a brief overview here of the considerations that one might think through before going gung-ho anyway with intermittent fasting. Hope it helped.